Ready to go? All right. Good afternoon or evening, everybody. At this time, I'm going to start the meeting for FMT. Are there any public comment on tonight's agenda? I don't see any. Joe?
Thank you, Will. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start by thanking the board, superintendent, and fellow administrators for allowing the FMT to go a week later so that we had a little bit more time to come up with the most accurate budget for the Colonial Elementary School project. We got some good news. I know in previous meetings we spoke about a $21.5 million budget, and after the third-party budget review came in, we are looking at a $21 million budget. So it actually, good news was it actually went down a little bit, and in that $21 million is if the board was to accept several alternates. So the 21 number could go lower if we don't take all of the alternates. So that was what we promised that we would share with you, so we had some accurate numbers before we got to the board meeting next week, because what we'd like to do now is, if the board is okay with what we've presented you up to date, up to this point, we would like to, I would write a motion for it to be approved at the next board meeting that the Colonial Elementary School project will be a $21 million budget. So Dr. Christian and Mark and I, we all did sit down, review the numbers and details, the breakdown. And again, I'd be glad to share that all with you individually or through email. I can share all them numbers with you.
Just as a reminder, this includes renovation of CES, taking a portion of the gym and moving all the DO offices on the first and second floor, taking advantage of the vacant space upstairs, creating 18 classrooms for CES. The cafeteria is already large enough because of the board's previous work 5 years ago. It will provide ample space for our increased growth in the current second grade class and first grade classes, which has been supported by a large kindergarten coming in. So we expect an additional 100 to 150 students coming here in a few years. Joe has gone above and beyond to meet with teachers, principals, DO staff. Next month we'll go through the phasing, but we just want to stick to the timeline of being able to get out to bid right after the new year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we're ahead of this, and it was important for the architects to get a third-party estimator to give us a number so the board would be comfortable approving a not-to-exceed number. We were hoping to approve it in November, but with the work that Joe and his team did, be able to approve it in October is even better, and we can get working on this. So,
just a quick question, Joe. Is there something? Do I recall something built into this that's being done everywhere anyway? That
emergency generator.
So how much is that worth?
There'll be when it was individual, it was around $250,000.
Okay, so that's part of this 21.
Yes.
And then the alternates. Not that we would choose all of the alternates, but if you added up all the alternates, what are we talking about?
They're just under $1 million.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. And it does include air conditioning in the gymnasium and auditorium of this building.
And this building now hosts multiple concerts from the K-3 buildings because of the popularity of them and the size that we get. So we do the annual senior citizen luncheon here. Ridge Park's been coming here. I expect Plymouth will start coming here, which is great to have, air conditioned auditorium.
Right.
It's such a great space to host the concert. So.
And what is the cost of, do we know about the cost of the air conditioning of the gym and the auditorium?
I think we had them in the 5-year capital. I forget what they were, to be off the top of my head, but I can get you that number.
So we're talking at least $2 million.
I think it was just under.
No, I mean for all of it together.
Oh, for all of it, correct, yes.
Yeah, okay,
yes.
Thanks.
If the board needs specific questions answered, Joe can talk with everybody, go through all the plans, but I think we've talked about it at length. This is a good plan, and to get the third-party estimate is good. And we want to be ahead of other projects that are coming this spring. So we'd like to approve it next week and get moving forward.
Just to refresh my memory, the original theoretical budget we were working with was 20 million. The bond issue was 15 million. So now we're going to come in 21, and then we have a plan for that 6, right?
Right. So the initial plan was that we would go get the seed money, and then as the project progresses, we'll take a look at the capital reserve fund as well as some other options in terms of financing or how to bridge that gap or the additional up to $6 million. But that'll be something we'll take care of either a year and a half from now. Nothing we need to worry about right now because that $15 million is basically the money we'll use for the next 2 years to get going.
Great, thank you.
So the motion, excuse me, the motion for the meeting, is that for us to approve a not to exceed number, or it's not to
Yes.
exceed? Okay, thank you.
That will get word out on the street that the project is moving forward, because we have to advertise, 3 weeks in November and December for the bid.
You have to,
But
yeah.
we can start getting it out there that the project's out there. And if we run into a situation where the bids come in a little bit higher, we can always reconvene and have a board meeting. And obviously, we're going to have a couple new board members there. But at least we know, based upon the estimate, that we're in the ballpark. And so that allows us to keep moving forward.
Yeah, by law, we have to advertise 3 consecutive weeks. But that is, I guess, good news. It's a very short agenda. Again, I thank everyone, even my fellow colleagues, for waiting patiently. But we wanted to get that number. And again, GKO is also grateful for the extra time. The extra days were important, again, just to get an accurate number. So I happily say that it's the last item on my agenda this evening.
All right, thank you. Any more questions from any of us? Any public comments? All right, I take this as an opportunity to adjourn and turn it over to Rick. Thank you.
Good. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Welcome to the Curriculum Committee meeting of the board. Is there any public comment on the agenda? All right, seeing none, I'll pass it over to Mrs. Gregitis, please.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to October's Curriculum Committee of the Board meeting. We do have 3 items on our agenda this evening. The first of which is discussing artificial intelligence in our schools. We're then going to talk with you and share with you about our best practices fair coming up November 7th. And then we do have a few conference requests for your approval this evening. So we're going to start with artificial intelligence in our schools. And we have Brooke and Joe here to present for all of you.
All right, good evening, everybody. So I'm joined tonight by Brooke Carpenter, who is one of our library media specialists. She is at Colonial Middle School. So this evening, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, just to give you a perspective on how the district has been leveraging it, both from an instructional standpoint as well as for students, and where we're going in terms of the direction. Because it's not something you've likely heard about it in headlines or turned on NPR or any news channel recently. It's certainly a large topic of conversation that has a lot of impact on what we do in schools. So I wanted to actually give a brief demonstration. So as I'm talking, this is a little bit tiny up on your screens, but what I did is I was struggling with developing a presentation. And so I went into ChatGPT, which is one of these artificial intelligence feeders, basically, like a bot, and I asked it to develop a presentation for me. So what you see typing on the screen right now is the artificial intelligence bot that is creating the full presentation that I'm talking about right now. If I were a student or a lazy person, I would just go ahead and use this outline, right? I don't necessarily have to do that, but as you can notice, it's developing individual slides. It's going over the virtues of what AI can do for students, what it can do for teachers. It's also giving me some suggested topics and sub-bullets. And this goes on and on until it actually generated an error because I think I overloaded it with too many requests. So as kind of a hook or seeing what this can do, this is just the beginning of what these tools are capable of doing. They will also develop rubrics. They'll develop, they could do itineraries for your travel plans. It could give you parenting advice, though I wouldn't necessarily recommend taking it. It can do those things, right? So we'll talk more in detail about what it can do. But as you can see, it's continuing, right, on developing a presentation for what we talk about when we talk about AI in schools. So this is something that connects directly to what we're talking about when it comes to our profile of a graduate. Our students are using this tool, and that's only one of many tools. Brooke will make mention of a couple of others. They don't have access to these in school, but they certainly do the second they leave our doors. Or if they have access to their cell phones, there are a number of apps that they're able to access that will generate a lot of this information for them. But what we do want to have them be is technology savvy. We want them to be inquisitive. We want them to be able to utilize tools like this responsibly, ethically, and to make sure that we are using them appropriately as educators to drive our learning in the right direction. So we came up with a core set of beliefs for where we want AI to be, right, in our district. We worked alongside teachers to develop these in a number of different departments because it affects not just English, it affects math, it affects science, it affects library, it affects everything that we do. We believe that all students deserve access to quality education. We believe that it is critical to know why and name what matters before we incorporate technology into what we do. We believe that AI can support equity by providing teacher assistance, for instance, allowing more time for meaningful face-to-face interactions with students. And we believe that AI can support student achievement by providing scaffolding and adaptations to meet individual student needs. Those last 2 points are really critical for us because we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our learners. And AI serves as a tool that can do that or help us with that. We did want to issue just a caveat. At this point, we do not offer this tool or any artificial intelligence for student use. That is a FERPA violation as well as a COPPA violation. You do have to be 18 in order to access it and sign off on the releases. So we ran that by the solicitor just to make sure that was the case back in November, but we did want to make sure that everyone was aware of it. So we can't prevent them from doing that at home. We can demonstrate on screen through teacher accounts, and we can work alongside them with this tool. Brooke, do you want to go ahead and take over from here?
Yeah, this was your prompt. You want to read that?
Oh, I'd love to. Sure. So, prompted ChatGPT. One of the other things that we had plugged into it was explain generative AI, clarifying its capabilities and potential pitfalls. How does it work? What are its limitations? What is its value? You're presenting to a secondary educator colleagues as an expert on AI. Provide a succinct answer in 2 to 5 sentences. You can even give it parameters for how long you want the response to be. So if I'm a student writing a 5-paragraph essay, I could ask it to write 5 paragraphs of a certain length in certain sentences. So as you can see here, it did generate a response. Like for this particular model, it can analyze extensive data sets, enabling to create human-like text responses. I'm not going to read every single part of the response, but it will define what it can do and what its limitations are. So it is kind of aware of what it is able to do in a very meta type of way. But again, it does have severe limitations. So we do want to make sure that students know what those are, as well as teachers. It's not for knowledge building, but it is for assisting and scaffolding for certain things you might not know or maybe struggling with.
So this is presented by Matt Miller, who's known from Ditch That Textbook. It's a very extensive network of educators, of professional development programs. And he really captured concerns that a lot of our teachers, because you hire good teachers who worry about the ethics, who worry about how students are going to use this, worry about how they're going to use it. And he really created a spectrum of AI, how you can go all the way from AI doing the work and a kid learns nothing to AI being a tool, AI helping you when you're stuck, AI adapting, so that you can get to the point that our goal would be to use it at the more human work and letting the computer do things that aren't the best use of our time. So when we present for Best Practices Fair, when we present at NCTE, we want to bring an understanding of AI tools and ease fears that teachers have. We want to provide demonstrations and anecdotes from our team experience, from the teachers who are starting to implement it. And we really want to empower teachers to use AI to assist with the tasks that shouldn't be taking up their brain space. We want teachers to be focused on building relationships with their students, knowing their students well, knowing what to ask the AI for, so that their time is better managed. So we see it as a tool for planning. It's organizing information, generating materials in alignment with state standards. It's a useful professional collaboration tool. It's helpful for differentiation. Teaching, we kind of see as the last piece. It's primarily that planning and differentiating. So some anecdotes in planning. We've had teachers, including me, just brain dump information. I want to share with parents this, oh yeah, and also that, and these things. And it will organize it into paragraphs with a lovely greeting, transition sentences, and then I can go back and put my personal stamp on it. But instead of me agonizing over a parent email, I can just get the information out and tweak it as I need it. I worked with 6th grade PLT group. They were debating the exact wording on a rubric. They wanted to use a current event article. So it wasn't something that had already been, it wasn't a released test item, it wasn't from a core thing, but they really felt like this ties in perfectly with what we're doing. The current event, it's going to grab kids. We were able to say, ChatGPT, generate a prompt for this article and create a rubric based on the PSSA TDA standards for grade 6. It generated the rubric. First, it generated the holistic rubric, which is what the state does. We were able to say, could you break it down by conventions, organizations, the way we like to do it, so we give kids more meaningful feedback. And then the PLT time was spent tweaking what ChatGPT created. It was awesome to see a team that is very passionate. And so if someone has offered a suggestion and someone is critiquing it, it becomes personal. When ChatGPT generated the rubric, we can now discuss it in a more objective way, and the time saved was tremendous. It also will generate examples. We also were able to generate models. Can you give us a model of a TDA using this prompt at this level, and then they had students work with it to evaluate, how do you think we're grading it? What do you think it deserves? We've used it to generate examples of poems. So this is a recent example I have a video for. Generating multiple choice questions, coding questions. If you enter in questions that you've developed and the state standards, it can code them with the 1.cc 3. It'll do all that, so we can use it in Canvas. Do we have 3 minutes? Let me show. All right.
So this is information from Josh Rothstein, who used ChatGPT to plan a meaningful transition lesson. He knew that he was done with the one story, he was ready to move on to the next. It was a Friday, not a great time to start something brand new. But he knew he wanted to review some key skills, like the focus standard, citing text evidence, and he knew he wanted to prepare the kids for internal conflict, which was going to be a real focus in the next story. So he entered into ChatGPT what's a narrative poem where the speaker struggles with an internal conflict. And ChatGPT gave a suggestion, Rhyme of Ancient Manager. Josh asked for a more modern poem, another, but an 8th grade level. So you can see he's just saying, give me more. And had some suggestions. First, he asked for a list of 7, which wasn't specific enough to prompt. So he said, ChatGPT said 7 items. Give me a list of 7 poems that deal with internal conflict, teenage speaker. And this list really helped him out. He was able to focus in on The Fish by Elizabeth Bishop, a well-known poet. ChatGPT was able to pull the full text for him and then generate 5 multiple choice questions focusing on citing evidence, main idea, and inference with internal conflict. So he got his 5 questions, tweaked them a little bit, and then attached the ELA standards so he could see specifically which focus standards aligned, and then enter that into Canvas in our Outcomes feature. Had them phrased with multiple choice focus on choosing lines from the poem, because that, again, was his focus in class. And then from there, he could go into Canvas, create a quiz, work through the poem, and then the outcomes that he got, he could see right away which standards did most of the kids have mastery of, which ones did they need to work on more as a group, and who needed individual attention. So this really encompasses planning. It will lead to differentiation, and it will change his instruction because of the resources from ChatGPT. And all in all, he said it took 7 to 10 minutes with kind of an extra 5 minutes to tweak and make sure everything was the right quality.
So I just thought that was a really powerful example of how a teacher could use what his expertise in ELA, letting the machine sort through all the poems, generate the questions, match up those standards. Sorry, let me go.
So this is
Sorry. And in terms of differentiation, another tool that we have available that is not, I don't find it quite as effective as ChatGPT. It's getting there. The other nice thing about AI, whatever we're using today is the worst version of it. It's only getting better. But there's a program called DIFIT where you can enter text and say, I want it to come back at this reading level. And so our 7th grade history is full inclusion. It doesn't always do a great job. Sometimes we switch to ChatGPT. But our 7th grade history department is full inclusion, so the range of reading levels is very wide. So to be able to give kids comparable content at an approachable reading level is huge. We're also able to give kids who struggle to start, especially writing, to give sentence starters that would be appropriate for the prompt, just to give them that scaffold that they need to access their response. And based on the questions created, like I said, with Josh, being able to go in and say, now I can at a glance see where we're ready to move on and where the whole group needs help and who I need to pull for a small group. So some on-screen things that we've tried teaching, so student-facing, modeling changes in tone with ChatGPT. You can take a paragraph and say, revise, make it humorous, revise, make it sarcastic, and showing students quickly how that happens to help influence their own adjustment in tone in writing. We've used ChatGPT to offer arguments and counter-arguments, especially when kids don't want to think of a counter-argument. I will tell you, ChatGPT had a real hard time coming up with reasons why secondary students should go to school before 8 a.m. But when I said, tell me anyway, it did come up with it. And so we were able to provide that to students as they're learning to write counter-arguments, what they're fighting against. It did not address bus drivers at all. It only addressed student mental health, but it has not solved that problem, so.
Can I make a comment or have sort of a question to you? Sure. So I had a child who was very literal in things. He was on the spectrum, and so there were, picture Amelia Bedelia, right? So when the teacher would say certain phrases, he would just get stuck on that phrase. So this would be a way that the teacher could ask AI, how do I rephrase that for this student? That's awesome.
Yes. And it's nice because I know we all have had this experience of, well, I know, but I don't know how to tell you right now. And AI is perfect for that because it gets you started. You can give it the feedback, revise it this way. I see the answer and now I know, here's how I need to explain it better. And I do think long-term teaching, we're going to be teaching the kids these skills of how do you get the answer that you want. Because ultimately, I think the people who are going to be successful moving forward are the people who know how to get what they want out of AI. I think the AI is here, it's teaching it. And so when we're modeling how to revise, give me this, revise, give me this, I think that that's where we're going to end up teaching students. We're just not there yet because the safeguards aren't in place for students. So, but in generating models, that is such a time-consuming task, but it's so valuable for students to see different models. This is a great resource for that as well. Long-term, Khan Academy has been testing something called Khanmigo, where it's an AI that's interactive for tutoring. And so I think we're going to see more of that. I think that's worth keeping an eye on. Right now, it's free if you donate $12 a month. That's why we donate $12 a month, so we can test it out. But I think those pieces are coming. And I think that's going to be a really great tool for equity for kids whose parents aren't able to spend $50 an hour for a tutor. If we can provide a meaningful AI tutor that can meet their needs, that's huge. It can translate languages. One thing that I have heard is that it doesn't always capture tone in translation, but it does translate. So if you've got some basic information, it's great. I think it's a be careful and choose a different tool. And I haven't explored the translation tools, but it's the tone. That's where AI falls short.
And there are, this is only just one tool. There are tools for art. You can ask it to generate art in a specific style. And
Yes.
So there's a translation one that's currently being worked on right now, live translation in the moment into a litany of languages. So the possibilities are limitless. And as Brooke, what we're working with is the least sophisticated version of.
Can I ask a quick question too around, well, at first I just want to say I appreciate they're using it as a tool and not a crutch, and that we're teaching our students that when you're saying, like, I love the idea of like, here's an argument, here's a counter argument. Are teachers actually bringing up, say, ChatGPT and modeling how to create questions for students now, or are we doing that like behind the scenes and then just sharing that this is the outcome?
Josh Rothstein's a little bit ahead of most. His comfort level is higher than a lot of teachers. So he is modeling that, and I think that's a goal, especially at the high school.
Yeah.
I think that's something to be looking towards. I just had the conversation with 7th graders who said, why can't I use AI to paraphrase my note cards? We had to say, if you don't understand what the fact means, you don't know if the AI paraphrased it well, and by the time you figured it out, you're going to paraphrase it yourself. That's what we're working on here.
Right.
So we're working on that balance of it is a tool.
Yep.
You still have to learn. We gave the example to the 7th graders of a machine can lift weights, but that will not build your muscles.
Right.
So we're working on
I think it's great. And I think for administrative wise, like I know I've been having some conversations with educational colleagues around the evaluation piece within education for principals, for teachers, and so on, and how AI is going to help support that process and making it a little bit less time consuming on, the admin part. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to learn more about that too.
Well, I think from the admin standpoint, that kind of brain dump, put this into paragraphs for me, is going to be very helpful.
I don't know how deep we're getting into ethics and whatnot with, elementary school students and whatnot. But I think the total trust in a device or a tool needs to be explored as far as, like, in your scenario, why can't we do this? So they need to understand why they can't just totally trust it. And going forward, as they become adults, it really will become a crutch if they do. So I don't know what we're putting in place for that exploration as well, but I love this idea. I did some computer programming and stuff, so when you talk about prompts and whatnot, I don't know what else we're adding around the concept other than utilizing it as a tool, but like to kind of get a holistic understanding of how these things happen, how machine learning works, and what goes into that aggregate to then pull these things out that you want. Again, I don't know how deep you can get.
So I don't know about the elementary level, but I do know, I came across the hall from Kevin Herod, who teaches computer science. And I do know that the curriculum has a fantastic way of explaining to kids. Even before they touch a computer, he has them write programs where they have to walk in the hall and follow directions. So I know that the curriculum really focuses on what you get out of this is based on what you put into it.
And to build on what Brooke said, as far as digital citizenship is concerned, we do have a scope and sequence for addressing that starting at kindergarten. It takes place in the library as well as in our instructional technology classes, and it's embedded in everything that we do all the way up through high school. So we are looking, though, given that this is a newer resource, to making sure that we update those regularly so that we're trying to meet up with the times, but to make sure that students understand the safeguards that need to take place as well as the uses and how they can adapt their learning for those things.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, again, with this being a new tool, we thought that we had something with social media, and we realized how kids don't know, and sometimes parents don't really know how to use it. But this is more powerful. So, yeah.
How do the different teachers, different comfort levels, and I know we're not encouraging students to use it, but having 3 students, I know that every tool that exists that makes their lives easier, all of their peers will tell each other. How does teachers acknowledge? I know my then 8th grader last year was using AI tools to grade his essays and rewrite them as an 8th grader after he potentially did the rough draft, or he was using it as a refinement tool. And I know his teacher, who was Mr. Rothstein, was making sure that they were aware that he knew how to put the prompts to check and make sure if their stuff was AI generated. But how are we dealing with that dance and saying, we're not encouraging you to use these tools because you're not 18, but also we know they exist, and we're using peer reviews and other things to make the writing better. This AI tool to check your writing and make your work better is also useful. How are we balancing that?
Yeah. So I can't speak to what's going on with your own children, Mr. Carpenter, but what I would say is that much to Mr. Winchester's point, one of the things that we're really focusing in on is because it is so new, right? Last November is really when these hit the market, kind of a beta type of way. So it's very new. Kids are going to latch on to something new. They're going to use it. So a lot of the conversations that we're going to have at elementary is building that competence and the ethical component of how do we ethically use a tool. I think all of us here have a really healthy skepticism of any tool that comes out. We want to make sure that we're evaluating every possible use factor for it. From an instructional lens, I think that the departments are doing an excellent job of navigating what is cheating, what are my assignments, and if they can cheat so easily on the assignment, is it worthwhile, right? Am I writing with a student, or am I asking them to write at home? There's a big difference between the two things. So a lot of the work that we're doing both at the middle school and the high school is revising the way that we approach assessments and thinking through how can I work with students in that moment to maximize that relationship with them instead of simply saying, here's a task, go and.
And one of the things we have in our slides for best practices fair and for NCTE, kind of a flow chart. Are we providing assignments that students have the ability to do? Yes or no? If they don't have the ability to do it, they're going to cheat. So have you given an assignment that they're capable of, that you've prepared them for? Have we provided the time and the support? Yes, then they will be more likely to do it. No, more likely to cheat. So kind of working through, do they find the assignment meaningful? And I know that there are some kids who find nothing meaningful, but there's a large chunk of kids who can be swayed. And there's ways you can phrase the assignment that involve student input that would be easier to detect that this does not sound like your 8th grade opinion. So we have plans for doing that. Will we ever eliminate cheating? Have we eliminated it before AI? We have not. But we're preparing.
I think the key there is, though, not to get hung up on catching individuals who may be using it for an advantage, but rather how do the teachers embrace the technology, the emerging technologies, remodel how they teach, and then redefine how kids learn. The tech is there. It will always be there. Something new will come out 3 years from now. And if you walk into the library at the middle school, you see Brooke teaching her students, it's the application of what the technology can do to enhance their learning. If you walk into Josh's classroom, it's how do we embrace the technology to redefine how we learn? It can't replace critical thinking. It cannot. That's just the reality. And there are educators out there, and I was an English teacher in the 90s, and I thought somebody plagiarized. I went to the library, looked up books, tried to figure out maybe where somebody copied something. That's not the point. It's not supposed to be the I gotcha. It's the technology's here. How do we use it to redefine how we teach?
Thank you all.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Joe. We're looking forward to hearing more upon your return from the conference. So good luck with that as well. Thank you. And now we are going to speak briefly about our Best Practices Fair overview. Again, Best Practice Fair is a differentiated professional learning opportunity that we provide our staff on November 7th. It typically occurs every other year, and Maria is going to give us a little bit more insight into that.
Taking some of
I'm
my slide
sorry.
information
Good.
away from me. That's quite all right. But yes, we are excited to be bringing back the Best Practices Fair. And for those of you that are not familiar, this is something historically that we've done in Colonial School District, where we bring our brightest and best and ask them to share with their colleagues some of their best practices based upon the themes that we have for professional development. And so since I've been here, it's 15 years now, this is my 4th Best Practices Fair, and I believe that there was one previously before I came, so I think this is the 5th one that we've had at Colonial School District, and 2020 was supposed to be another Best Practices Fair, but obviously we had to hold off on that. So typically we've run these every 3 years, so we are excited to bring this back because it's always gotten some fantastic feedback from our teachers, and they really appreciate it learning from their peers. So what we have offered for this particular upcoming session is that we have within our district 17 elementary focused PD sessions and 5 that are focused at the secondary level. And then we have 12 additional ones that are agnostic. They can be K through 12. So those are our in-house teachers. It is not just our master teachers or department heads. It is a variety of teachers that submitted proposals last year and have been working on their presentations since last spring and are crafting it and getting the final pieces done and ready to share with us. In addition to our in-house presenters, we've also had the fortune to bring in outside presenters as well. And so we are offering a plethora of things. You'll see we have things from In Mind, which is part of our keynote, and I'll get to that in a second a little bit more. Link It, which we use for our assessments. We have Health Advocates, so we can focus on some self-care. And The Attic, Brandon Cummings, you might be familiar with as we go through some of our belonging and inclusion initiatives. Lynette Collins, we have Tang Math, we have IXL and Desmos, which are all great resources that we use within the district. Dysgraphia, Steels from Westchester University, as well as Pathful, which is our career education tool that we have here. Lexia and Nearpod, Vocabulary, Gale, and Benchmark. So all of these will offer great offerings on multiple areas, and teachers are able to seek out what their greatest interest is and attend sessions on that, as opposed to us dictating what sessions they're going to expand their professional learning on. Yep.
Are they being recorded? The sessions, are they being recorded so then?
They are not.
So a teacher is limited in what they can
Yeah,
sign
so
up
we
for?
are offering, some of the sessions will be offered more than once, so that if you have a session that you really want to see, but there's something else at the same time, you can go to a different session. So a lot of them will be offered in multiple times. We have, given at any period of time, I think we have about 25 sessions offered at each of our 5 time slots. And you can see this is our schedule at a glance. So we're all going to start the day off for 1 hour getting a keynote address from Josh McNeil. And as I mentioned before, Josh McNeil is from In Mind, and he really works with brain-based and trauma-informed approach to supporting students. So he's going to be offering something generically to all K-12 teachers, and then also offering individual sessions later on that are on more specific components of that neurologically development appropriate support. And then every session that will run thereafter is going to be a duration of about 50 minutes so that we have a 10-minute period of transition time in between each of our sessions. We will have a 1-hour lunch, and we also are offering, or not so much offering, but we are giving teachers choices that if they don't want to leave the grounds to do lunch on their own, we are going to have some vendors offering lunches to them. I think we have Chick-fil-A, Mission Barbecue, the Lobster Roll place, which we're all excited for, and then Colonial as well. Yep, so people can order their lunches ahead of time, and then we do have 2 more afternoon sessions also at 50 minutes. So it should be a great offering for our teachers. It's something that they've been asking for as we've been giving them asking for feedback from them, but they wanted a more differentiated approach to their professional learning so they could choose to build on their own repertoire. So we're excited to be offering it to them, and we think it's going to be really beneficial. We do want to also invite all of you, if you would like to come and sit in any of the sessions, Mr. Merck here is going to be handing out to you an invitation to cordially invite you to attend if you are available. It is election day, so we realize there might be some conflicts for people if you have to work the polls or anything, but we would love for you to come and see what we're doing. So feel free to come at any point in time in the day. I should also mention that the schedule will be going out to all staff via an app called Shed, and they can actually choose their sessions, and the sessions will close once 25 people are booked into each session, and then they can walk around with the app and see their sessions on their phones to know exactly where they're going. So we're excited to use that technology as well. We think it'll be pretty efficient. Any questions?
Just one quick question. Briefly, do you mind just sharing a little bit around, I'm super grateful that you have so many in-district presenters. I think that's amazing, learning from each other. Can you just give a little sense of like what are the in-district folks presenting?
Yeah, sure. Well, particularly we have PD areas of focus, right? So for this particular year, we have Portrait of a Graduate, and Joe actually had that slide up previously, but really looking at the holistic approach to the learner and what we want them to have when they leave Colonial School District. We have Inquiry for Engagement. Our big PD this year in the fall was around discourse and questioning, and looking at how you encourage student dialogue within the classroom to direct their own learning. And then the third thing that we have was the sense of belonging and inclusion. So those three factors, our sessions, our schedule will be grouped under each of those headings, so teachers can select based upon those three areas of focus.
And does the team tag the teacher, or does the teacher have an opportunity to apply to present?
So the teacher has the opportunity to apply, and we have a
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
that order. Then we gave back.
Yeah, and that all took place last spring. So
Yeah,
we've been
that's
working on
awesome.
this for a while. Yep.
I love it. Thank you so much.
It's a great day. We hope you guys
Do we need to present these as tickets to get in?
No, we know who you are, just welcome. And I will be sending on the lunch menu as well and the options. If you guys care to join us or are able to, and you would like to order a lunch, I will send that link on to all of you as well. Thank you very much.
Lunch is on Mark. Already.
Well,
Order
he's
whatever
not-
you want. Lunch is on Mark.
Yeah, that's perfect. Lobster rolls for everyone, I assume, then? And our last thing this evening, we do have a few conference requests for you to consider. Our first one is Katie Gear, who is a Spanish teacher at our high school. And Katie is hoping to go to the PSMLA Fall Conference to present there. She is also on the Executive Council. So that will be on the agenda on Thursday. And the other three are this amazing team that just presented to you this evening. They are looking forward to going to the Learning Forward Conference. And again, this is an annual conference that takes place for everyone who is in the area of professional learning to get together with their expertise to collaborate amongst others. It's more local than it has been. It's in DC this year. So they are looking forward to attending that as well. And the theme is evidence in action. So everything that we talk about is typically evidence-based. So we are hoping that they can bring back some wonderful insights and provide that as well to our colleagues. Any other questions that we have from the board?
If I could just ask the board's indulgence for a few moments, I just want to thank Rosemary, Maria, Ed, Joe, not only the past month when we obviously, Mr. Perlman has been out at White Marsh, but the past 2 years, there has been a distinct initiative by the curriculum office to be in our buildings, invisible, working with our teachers, making sure there's practical application so that students learn and they grow. Next 2 months, you're going to see some of our data that's come out, and the growth data is outstanding, K to 12. The achievement data, every year can fluctuate depending upon how classes perform. It's the growth data that we look at. And regardless of that, and obviously Karen's office too, Kate Gilmartin, Tim Murch, they are in the buildings. And that has clearly been something I've emphasized. They don't know I'm about to say this tonight. I just really appreciate their efforts, not just the past month, but the past year and a half, 2 years. And it's noticed, I think, by our faculty and by our staff and our parents that the DO is part of the buildings.
I'd just like to say, I think that you lead by example in that regard. That's why we picked you when we hired a superintendent, was we wanted somebody who would be visible in the buildings so that administration and teachers and kids would see that. So it's great that it's passed down and everybody in the administration is doing that. It's wonderful.
And I did hear you were in middle school on Friday. So you're everywhere.
I had a great day in the middle school on Friday. Lunch duty hasn't changed much in 15 years. I love my job now. The best job I ever had was middle school principal. No 2 days are the same.
Were you at the homecoming dance?
Not at the dance. I was at the game, not at the dance.
Have any kindergarten lunches lately?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. Had to change my shirt after one of them, but it was all good. Never have lunch with a kindergartner eating an Uncrustable.
One random technical thing. If you don't mind, in the future, if you embed Google Slides there, when we click on them, we're not authorized to access them from our laptops if they can be changed permissions to be publicly accessible.
I apologize for that. We can change that right now.
Fortunately, I had seen that video before, so.
Yeah.
It was just you, Rick. We were just not giving you access.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate the kind words and the acknowledgement. It's our pleasure, and we will keep doing what we do. We thank you for that.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board this evening, or any other?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I have a question slash comment slash question. In the same note, in terms of appreciation, October is also typically Principals Appreciation Month. So we acknowledge our principals, our leaders, our school administrators who are supporting our schools, creating safe environments and places of learning for all of our children. So I just want to give a shout out to all of our principals here in Colonial. And I'm asking this question naively. I think it's just important for us to ask this question because I'm not 100% sure. To your point around having the schools share their data, we're super excited to see that. And I know there's been some initial conversation that some of us have had around the format of what that looks like in the January meetings. And so per Sunshine, per just making sure that we're being, really transparent in this process, we were wondering if it's possible to switch the format from moving table to table to having schools present in clusters or in small groups to the board at the committee meetings, and then getting the slides ahead of time, having the opportunity to review them, and submitting any questions that we might have for schools, so that we can have more of an open conversation and dialogue versus speaking from the table to table movement that we had before. And I don't know if everyone's on board with that, so I really wanted to just open this up to the board if you had any questions or comments or any feedback around how we could possibly shift that space.
I certainly think not having everybody come on the same night would be beneficial because you do tend to feel like you're on a wheel. So I think that would be a great way to go about it, to just maybe bring them into, in small groups.
Yeah, and I know we did talk about this a little bit. I just want to make sure that when we present, we are making sure, since community members often come, that we are presenting, the data for them. Especially, I think we're super fortunate that a lot of us on the board are educators and have that background, but just that things are still being presented for our families, from that explanation, really, because I think, you can open up data and you can look at slides and numbers and your head can just start spinning. So making sure that, I think by breaking it down into different nights would be great, but really making sure that we're giving that presentation to our families would be good.
I was going to say something similar, and I was actually going to use the presentation, the AI presentation was really good. Like that is useful for everybody as a whole in terms of the examples. So utilizing examples as part of the presentation as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we were discussing previously when we had started to have this conversation around what this could possibly look like is just simply sharing points of pride. Like, obviously, we would have the slides, and yes, access to the slides is really important for board and for public. And then giving everyone an opportunity to share from an admin perspective for school, what are your points of pride? What is your data showing that's glowing? What are some areas that you're focusing on? And just keeping that part small, but then allowing some dialogue and for the public to ask questions, as we see fit. So
We're happy to present the data however the board would like to see it. Separating elementary and middle and high school probably is not a bad, elementary and secondary is probably a good idea. When we were doing the tables where we moved around when Liz was here, that was something just so the board could get to meet each of the principals individually. And so we'll present our data however you want to see it. I can tell you right now, third grade data, we never compare school to school. When we look at third grade, we look at our third graders. When you look at each building, Conshohocken had a fantastic year last year. 2 years ago, White Marsh had a great year. 4 years ago, Ridge Park had a great year. We look at the whole grade, and I know the board will do that too. But we will absolutely present the data however you want, ask questions, ask about growth, ask about PBOS, ask about achievement. Our elementary principals are fantastic, and I think they'll show you not only what they do with the end result, but what they do to get there with the targeted interventions and everything. So they're very proud of it. I can walk into any one of those schools and ask each of those principals, who are the kids that are on the bubble from getting from below basic to basic or basic to a proficient, and they can tell you to a person, they can tell you by name who those kids are. They absolutely can. And the teachers can, because they totally wear their scores on their sleeves. And that's not to say that the high school and middle school don't. It's just there's something different about elementary school. The kindergarten teachers can tell you to a child who needs to do what to get to where they need to be. So, yeah, we'll happily present it however you need.
And I think too for families especially to, again, I think as educators we can be really interested in the data, but I think families and parents a lot of times are looking for, yes, we have this, but what does that correlate into the day-to-day for my students? So I think, as much as we can look and crunch the numbers ourselves, I think really giving that feedback to families of what you can do to help students at home and what we're doing in our buildings to help students grow, I think is really important. And I know from being on the parent side of it, I think what somebody said about going table to table was sometimes really nice because you had a little bit more of a personal connection and to be able to really hear that, this is how the buildings and the administrators are working to really help our kids because, we can look at the data, but the actual implementation of it is what makes the progress happen.
Even in a building as large as our 4-5 building, the way the kids are scheduled and clustered, the teachers know we create small communities within those buildings, which is critical. So, Rose and Mike have those meetings, very specific meetings, and our supervisors and Rosemary are part of those meetings. So, yeah, we'll whatever you need, we'll present it that way.
That's great. Thank you.
And just one more shout out to the public. We'll have a press release. The high school, congratulations for making AP honor roll, which we've been striving for several years. And that includes not just the scores, but the number of students, including students from underrepresented groups participating in APs, increased enrollment in courses and subscription, as well as the scores. So they haven't released all the data yet. They just gave us the good newsletter, and you have to wait for the actual data, but they're in rare air to get there.
A little parent personal anecdote to AP courses. So my daughter, who's now a sophomore at University of Maryland, she took several AP courses and was awarded 25 credits. So that's saving us a lot of money in college towards.
I'm glad you said that
her
because
tuition.
in a month you're going to be asked to approve another AP course in social studies. So that'll give us 30 or 31 AP courses.
love it. Congratulations. That's awesome. Amazing. Does anyone on the board have any other questions or comments? Is there any public comment on anything? this evening? No? All right, that being said, go Phils, meeting adjourned.